What is up, guys? Welcome to the Meaning of Podcast, the podcast where we talk about your favorite directors and the deeper meaning within their films. We are here, RB3, and Sabrina. But joining us today, we have the bruja herself, Miss Dorina. What is up, girl? Dorina's in the house.
Hey, ¿cómo están? Thank you for having me. I miss you guys because I haven't been on this in a while. This is so exciting. This is like one of my favorite podcasts.
Yeah, so you've been on here before to talk Blade Runner, which was a lot of fun because we got you and RB3 to geek out about it. Me too, because I love that movie, those movies. And also we had you for that quick debate video, which again, I didn't want to be released.
I insisted.
And in retrospect, can we all conclude I was right?
Oh,
Wait, what?
I mean, I was right.
I don't know about all that.
I mean, Joker did win like a bunch of Oscars.
No, but I was right about the Joker fan.
Nope.
That guy who was screaming about Parasite and Joker. I was like,
Okay.
I literally felt like a meme
Well.
in my living room where I was like, this.
Yeah, but
is
that,
no
you
one
can say
here?
that-
Like,
you
this
can
is
say
what
that
I was
about-
talking about.
No, Andres, as you are one of the biggest Star Wars fans I know, any fandom you can find people like that. So the
True.
fandom does not make the movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just because there's crazy people within the fandom,
Absolutely,
doesn't mean-
but Star Wars has a wider base. The problem with Joker is that it felt like a direct arrow towards that base. But anyways, we're here to talk about another Joker, and that is the Keaton Batman movies, also known as the Burton Batman movies. We've all talked about Burton before. We love Tim Burton. Dorina loves Tim Burton. So we're going to talk about those two movies, Batman 1989 and Batman Returns, I'm sorry. Those two movies that we're going to be talking about today, all about Mr. Michael Keaton. Obviously, this is movies that were referenced in Birdman, a movie that got him a Oscar nomination. A lot of people felt like he should have won for that. But either way, guys, we're all big fans of Michael Keaton. We're all big fans of Batman. I want to toss it to you, Dorina, first of all. What is it about these movies, it could be either or, that really just hits for you and just really made a staple on your life? Because it came out 89, which is right when, you can make an argument that right when comic book movie adaptations were starting to become a thing.
Yeah, I mean, 89, I was 7 years old when I first saw it. So it was the perfect age where I was reading like golden age comics, right? I was reading like the kiddie stuff, everything, from Batman. I was reading X-Men, but I was more we didn't have any superhero movies around then, other than like, the Christopher Reeves, like Superman movies, like that were very popular when I was a kid. But we didn't really have anything Batman other than like the TV show from '66, right? With the great Adam West and Julie Newmar and all those cool people, Cesar Romero. And I liked the TV show as a kid, but it was obviously, on the campier side. And so when I sat down to watch 89 in the theater, I specifically remember like the opening credits, where you hear Danny Elfman's amazing score, one of the best superhero things we've ever had, and you literally see the camera panning throughout like the Batman symbol, and then you actually see that it's the Batman symbol, and I immediately was like, oh my god, what is this? Like I haven't seen a superhero movie like this. And I know nowadays, obviously we have the Nolan movies and we have other stuff that is, much more serious and based in reality, and perhaps the Tim Burton movies are now a little bit cheesier or dated, but for a kid 7 years old in the theater, it blew my mind. It's exactly what I wanted out of a Batman movie. It made me immediately be interested in reading more Batman, and that's when I got into like the 80s comics, right? Like the Frank Miller stuff, etc. And obviously, Batman Returns completely changed my life. Like we'll get into that. We'll get into the Michelle Pfeiffer hour.
Yes, which is going to happen for sure. Same question to you, Sabrina. What is your connection to this movie? I mean, obviously you didn't see it in theaters because you weren't alive. But what is your first time watching it? Retrospect, whatever it is you want to go into, but your connection to this film.
Yeah, so I came at it from a kind of like different angle because I had already seen stuff like X-Men. I've seen stuff that was more like grounded, a little grittier, definitely dealing with adult themes. So when I first watched these films, it was really, really interesting to see this type of character. And I was aware of Adam West just because my dad was a huge fan. So I had seen a little bit of what he did as Batman. And going from that campier to this grounded, gritty, but still really fun and playful, I thought was really interesting because it still has bright colors. It still, even like the Batmobile, the way a lot of things were designed, they're very comic booky. They're very like very exaggerated. It's not the kind of sleek Batman that we have in Christopher Nolan's. So I always thought it was something really interesting. It's very eye-catching. So I was really drawn to it when I was a kid, and I loved these two films. So looking back on it, I haven't watched them in a few years. So I was really excited that we were able to revisit them for this episode. Definitely have a lot of takes just because it's been a while. But yeah, so that's what kind of makes these films stand out. Obviously, as Dorina said, Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, that was, when I was a kid and I saw that, I was like, that's what I want to be. So that was something that stuck with me forever. So yeah, I really did enjoy these.
RB3, same to you.
Well, I kind of came at these Batman movies a little bit differently because I'd actually not necessarily. I watched these a little later in life. Like I watched these like in the middle of high school for me. So it was already like when I was already like 14, 15, something like that, and had already been exposed to the Christopher Nolan Batman movies and already knew what those were about. But when you watch something like '89 Batman or Batman Returns, like through the lens, and at the time I was watching them through the lens of like a Tim Burton like kind of binge, like going on the rabbit hole of like Tim Burton movies, who I really enjoy as a filmmaker. And then what you see as a distinguishing factor with Batman Returns is that it feels like the most expressive Batman movie or pair of movies that you're ever gonna see of Batman. Where every other attempt subsequently, with the Nolan Batmans to Zack Snyder's Batman to now what looks like Matt Reeves' Batman is super realistic, super gritty, super serious. This is the first kind of like expressionistic kind of perspective to like the Batman character that we see. And even like even like the old like Adam West and Cesar Romero like Batman and Joker scenes, even those were still kind of set in like a kind of real world ish kind of environment. It was goofy, but it was real world. But what Tim Burton really excelled at was like making the universe all of his own, right? Like making Gotham feel distinctly like Gotham. Because when you watch the Nolan movies, Gotham feels like a city like Detroit or Chicago or Pittsburgh, or and where you watch the Zack Snyder Batman v Superman, it feels like CGI. But when you watch Batman the original with Tim Burton, it feels like a distinct Tim Burton built universe who he really cared intricately about production design, about the aesthetic, and about the environment that was created. So much so that he almost, in my opinion, there's almost more of a focus on like the world and Joker, who we're going to talk about later, than there was on the actual Batman figure himself. So I think that's what's most fascinating to me, is that like I feel like from in a lot of respects, Tim Burton's Batman is less about the Batman character himself and more about the art and the aesthetic.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I was watching another movie over the weekend, and it really hit me. There's really something about the power of aesthetic. And I think no one really does that better than Tim Burton, right? Where he's so obsessed with aesthetic of this gothic, weird, downtrodden, but at the same time slightly campy and slightly over the top world and universe that he created. That captures everyone's imagination, but especially children, which is what I feel like all of us were slightly younger when we saw this movie. And that really sticks with you almost more than anything else. I think that's why, personally, my favorite movies of all time happen to be a very interesting aesthetic, right? The Matrix is my favorite movie of all time. All black leather coat, whatever. Green tail, all that stuff. And then Underworld, vampires, all black leather, same thing. Blade, all black, same thing. It's like the same similar aesthetic. And that really stood out to me as a kid, where I was like, this story was like everyone for the critics were criticizing it, but me, I'm just like, I just like, it looks cool. It looks really freaking cool. And I think Burton nails that, Dorina, in pretty much all his movies. He nails that crazy cool aesthetic.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you think of his newer movies, right? Whether most people aren't fans of those as they were of like, you're not, most people don't like an Alice in Wonderland versus an Ed Wood, right? But all his movies that aren't like particularly Disney CG movies, they all look really amazing. Like
Right.
whatever you think of the actual story. And I think it's because he's so good at making you feel immersed within his fantastical world. Whereas I feel like for me personally, maybe because I'm used to that, later superhero movies make me feel more like I'm watching a video game sometimes versus believing what's happening. And I don't know if that has to do with just me being old and like sick of, a lot too much CG and too much green screen as opposed to like when CG can complement practical effects, But the world building in Tim Burton movies are incredible, let alone specifically in the Batman movies. Like the first time I saw, Batman '89, like I felt like I was in that world. I felt like I was watching, it was the first time I truly saw a Gotham City that made me feel like, holy shit, like I could go there and I just felt really immersed in the world. And you cannot say anything negative about their production design. Right, like even the Schumacher movies, you can criticize them all you want, but like their production design was incredible, and we don't get that type of stuff in newer superhero movies, right? Because everything is in front of a CG screen, or not everything, but a lot of MCU movies are, right? Like maybe something that's not MCU, like Logan, right? Like that's based more on reality, but a lot of the other like superhero sort of action sequences, I kind of get bored a little bit unless it's something like Winter Soldier because you're seeing actual choreography, right? And that's what I miss, because in the Burton movies, they did have choreography. Even if you see like Michael Keaton like being short in his suit, at least they're still fighting, right?
Yeah,
So
and
at
able to
least
move his
I believe
neck.
that there's danger. Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why, Dorina, obviously there's many other reasons why, but the main reason why is because of cost. Those elaborate sets cost a lot of money, and now it's much cheaper to use CGI to build a CGI set that looks like it's real versus something that's actually real. But you're right, there is something special about production design that's real, and it's real in a comic book world, right? Which is supposed to be different and exaggerated.
I think they shut down the whole Warner Brothers lot to turn it into Gotham City when they were filming this movie. So.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It really does add so much character, basically complementing everything you guys are saying. It means so much more, and it does immerse us into that, and it feels lived in, and it feels authentic, rather than just watching something that is a whole... When I see behind-the-scenes stuff, and it's an entire CGI green screen, like, stage, I just, like... The magic is kind of sucked out. It really, because Beetlejuice is one of my favorite movies of all time, and that's another testament to Tim Burton as a filmmaker and just everything he does with his immersing us into everything that's happening within his films. And it feels so much more lived in and real when it's like that and it's practical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Sabrina, lived in is a great word because that was, again, an old person. That was one of my main problems with, don't get mad, Andres, but with the Star Wars prequels, right? Like, there's that difference of, like, it's just a different look. It's different aesthetics. It depends on what you prefer. But I prefer, like, the gritty look of, like, these people are actually lived on these ships. You know what I mean? And everything looks dirty and it's not super clean. And so that's how I feel about these movies. And, obviously the lighting, right? Just freaking adding fog, whatever, like these people are adding, it just makes it look much more realistic, at least to me.
No, I love production design. That's actually, if you're an avid listener of The Meaning Of, RB3 knows this. That's like my little weird thing that I'm obsessed with, production design. And I always will pick an incredible production design over CGI. That's just me personally. That's why I really liked Crimson Peak. Shout out to
Guillermo del Toro.
Guillermo del Toro. Even though a lot of people hated that movie, I was like, man, it just looks so freaking cool.
It looks really good regardless of what you think. Yeah.
I just really liked the aesthetic he was going for, which again is another Del Toro thing to
It
make
was that
it
gothic aesthetic. It's that like classical goes back to like the old school 1930s, 1940s German expressionism movement that kind of came out and had these like really weird and twisted imagery of like, swirly buildings and crooked angles and all that kind of stuff. And Tim Burton utilized a lot of that to make this film distinctive and powerful and feel subjective. It gives you a real opportunity to feel the weirdness and the darkness that's subsisting inside of Gotham City.
And I like what you said, RB3, about the idea of a comic book world that's not necessarily our world. What's interesting about DC Comics is that although Marvel is set in current America, DC isn't. Metropolis, Gotham, Fawcett City, all these places that are fictional places where Flash, Superman, and Batman are located.
Themyscira, yeah. Is that how you say it in English? Themyscira?
Yeah, Themyscira.
Okay.
They're all fictional locations. Like Metropolis isn't a real city you can visit versus Spider-Man in New York. And there's something to be said about that, with making Gotham almost otherworldly inside these Burton movies. Any final thoughts on Gotham City, Sabrina?
Yeah, basically just what I said before. I think the thing about it is that Tim Burton adds such a flair to this that I don't think the film wouldn't be anywhere near as impactful as it is with all of this. Because that's my favorite part of it, is the production design, is the direction, is everything about that. Yeah, 100%. And that's what I notice even on a rewatch now. That's the thing that still holds up the most, is all of that. Because it really does make a big impact, immersing us into this world that's lived in, and that's what sticks with us at the end of the day, because I don't feel like I'm watching something that's created in post-production 100%. I feel like with the actors and the lighting and the camera work, especially even in Returns, I feel like a lot of the lighting and the camera work is even better in that one, and he matured more as a filmmaker in those few years. But with all of that, that's what adds the character to the film. That's what adds all the richness. That's what adds everything that kind of just sticks with me the most.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think,
also an shout out to the costume designer and like art director, because you're right. It's everything that you can see, right? Like anything that's visual to the eye. Like the costumes are also incredible, right? And they fit. Like it's just, these people are. I think they're magicians.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's what sticks the most. What were you going to say, RB3?
And I was going to say, like, the production design can only be held by, like, and the direction can only be held by, like, the colorful, like, characters that live in that world, too, right? So it's like, it kind of went to perfect casting when you get somebody like a Michael Keaton playing the lead as Bruce Wayne / Batman. Mostly a comedic actor, but he can lend to, like, the little bit twisted and comedic side of the universe while still keeping it maintained and mundane in the real world. Same thing with Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson could put on clown makeup and he could act silly and over the top and play Prince music all he want. But at the end of the day, he's still Jack Nicholson, and he's still adding extra layers on top of his performance to make it even a deeper Joker than it had any right to be. So it's still the characterization that also makes it special too.
Yeah, I mean, we have to get to the elephant in the room, which is the shirt you're wearing, Dorina.
I was like,
I'm going to do that a lot.
Sabrina's like, but it's a black shirt.
Black t-shirt?
That's the casting of Michael Keaton as Batman. This was a big deal in 1989. Apparently, a lot of people wrote letters against it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people didn't want Mr. Mom to be Batman, which is what Keaton was known for at the time. Talk to me about the casting of Keaton and what he represents nowadays in retrospect, Dorina.
Well, Michael Keaton is the greatest actor of our generation, and by generation I mean ever. Look, I'm obsessed with that man. Like that's probably the one actor that I'd freak out if I met. But that's because I get it's not just Batman, right? Beetlejuice, like anything that man does, he's a freaking genius. I think he's amazing. He can play anything. He can do it all. But as we've seen, since there was no internet back in the day, and you're right that people were sending letters, and I guess it ended up on like the newspaper that they're like, that people were talking about how dare this short actor, like Batman's not short, and stupid things like that, right? Like but then again, look at what Henry Cavill looks like. Henry Cavill literally looks like Superman. Like he looks like a Greek god, and people still get upset at his characterization of Superman, right? Like no matter what, you're always going to have haters, and you're never going to please everyone. But the thing that I love about Michael Keaton specifically for Batman is that, yes, it's Tim Burton's interpretation of Batman, but he does such a good job of the duality, of showing the duality between Bruce Wayne and Batman. Like, as much as I think Christian Bale was a great Batman, I still think he was playing Bruce Wayne as this like playboy sort of, like, he wasn't being himself in front of people. He wasn't being himself in front of the cameras. He was playing, like, he was Batman, but when he was in public, Bruce Wayne was kind of like a character he was playing, right?
Yeah.
He would only really be Bruce and Batman with like Alfred and people close to him. Whereas with Michael Keaton, you see him being an actual, like, not playboy, but you see him being like this just dude that happens to have a lot of money, that is lonely, and he's charming, and he's attractive to, I'm sure, both women and men, because who wouldn't be attracted to Michael Keaton? But that duality of being the lonely Bruce Wayne that lost his parents, and then also wanting to do something right for his city and actually help out. Like, I feel like every Batman we've seen is either a great Batman or a great Bruce Wayne, but Michael Keaton, I feel like, was able to do both. And even like when he looks, maybe you can criticize the way he looks in his suit, like his voice is great. I love his voice. Like, I'm never, the best Batman voice always is going to go to Kevin Conroy, of course, but Christian Bale sounds like angry Clint Eastwood sometimes when he's doing the Batman voice. You know what I mean?
All right.
So, and I love that scene where he, when he's with the Joker in Vicky Vale's apartment, and he's like, "Let's get nuts." Like, he's also, goofy. And other than Kevin Conroy showing charming Bruce Wayne and really cool, serious Batman, I feel like Michael Keaton, to me personally, has been the best one at portraying both characters, as opposed to, like, I still like Batfleck, I still like Christian Bale a lot. Michael's my favorite.
Yeah, and it's always difficult to play that role because I feel like a lot of it comes from the comics as far as what you want to express, because a lot of that is directly from the comics where he's playing this character that is Bruce Wayne,
right.
But at the same time he's really Batman. It's that idea that he's not Bruce Wayne, he's Batman. I think there's even a scene, it might be Batman Beyond, I think it is Batman Beyond, where he says, like, "What do you call yourself in your head?" And he refers to himself as Batman. He doesn't call himself Bruce in his own head. And I thought that was kind of funny because that's kind of what Batman is. He's more Batman than he is Bruce Wayne. He's less human than anything else. But yeah, I just really like that choice that Michael Keaton went with for sure.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is up to him. What are your thoughts on the Keaton casting, RB3?
Well, I think, just like Dorina says, yeah, he's definitely the most charismatic. I think even that makes sense why the George Clooney casting, after him, which was after Val Kilmer, seemed like a good choice because that they wanted to continue that, like, charming Bruce Wayne thing, right? Which is very much like his own thing, especially in these movies. When we talk about Christian Bale, he's like Dorina said, he has this kind of like shield over him. He's very much more Batman than he is Bruce Wayne. It's because he's still haunted by, like, the whole parents thing. Same thing with, like, Zack Snyder and Ben Affleck's Batman. He's still, like, haunted by the whole parents thing. And this movie, he's not that at all. Like, he seemingly kind of moved on to some extent. Like, even to so much so where at the end of the movie, he literally kills the person who murdered his parents, which in Batman mythology, that's the whole reason why he fights crime, is because he doesn't know who kills his family, right? But I guess in this interpretation of Batman, Burton's interpretation of Batman, is less about his parents dying and more just about doing the right thing and being a crusader of justice, So he's less traumatized, he's less like PTSD out than like other Batman characters, but I think that's why it's kind of the most referenced Batman movie too, because you look at Lego Batman movie, it's kind of like a parody directly of Michael Keaton's Batman movie. Birdman is obviously a direct parody of this Batman, and of course, even I would say Joker even takes inspiration from this Batman, right? Even from the extent of like having Joker being the one that kills Bruce Wayne's parents, like at the end of Joker. That's also what relates back to this movie too. I think it's all tied in like the references together. I think it's the most influential Batman movie I think we've seen, largely because of Michael Keaton and his portrayal of having like that duality nailed down for sure.
Yeah. It was
Go ahead,
something that, like, rewatching these films, I really thought about, especially in hindsight, getting to see Christian Bale's Batman. And I don't ever like to compare people playing different, or people playing the same character too much, just because they can have their own interpretations. But I think Michael Keaton did do a really, really amazing job as Batman, even though he, to me, and I know this is like kind of a hot take, he just isn't the most interesting part of this movie at all. I think Joker kind of steals it, and I honestly see this more as Joker's film than I see it as Batman's, just because the reasons that we don't, every relationship he has in his life, there's no connection. I don't really feel a connection towards him and Alfred, him and Vicky Vale. I'm not super aware of like his motivations too much throughout this entire film. Just the baseline, I think since they get rid of the whole entire kind of origin story, when we're introduced to this Batman, we're starting at a place that I think is super interesting and I still really enjoy it. But it's a little different from what we've seen, just because if I'm not mistaken, we don't even find out his parents, like, about his parents, like, murder until, like, the end of the second act, or, like, part of the second act or something like that. And so Michael Keaton did an incredible job in this role, and his portrayal I really do enjoy. I just don't feel a connection as much as I do with, like, Christian Bale's. I kind of like to see that, like, downtrodden, haunted person versus something like this, where he's just kind of living life, because I don't know why, when I was watching this one, I don't think we as an audience really understand why he's fighting crime, because even when he says it in the movie, he's kind of just like, because I don't know the exact phrasing of the quote, but I think he says something like, it's just what I have to do, or something like that to Vicky.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it would be different if he was like, I want to be here for like the people of Gotham, like this is my city and I want to protect it, or something like that, not just like it's what I have to do. But yeah, so that's kind of my takeaway. I really did enjoy his performance so much, but the character as a whole, I just don't think the writing really served Batman as much as it did Joker. I think Joker kind of stole the show.
I disagree and agree, but RB3, go first.
Oh, no, you go.
Oh, I totally agree with the fact that I think in both Batman 89 and Batman Returns, it's clear that Tim Burton is really interested in the villains, right? Like it's more of a villain movie than a Batman movie, and that's been, I think that's clear to a lot of people. But I disagree when it comes to his portrayal, where like for sure he's not as tortured as, say, like, the other Batmans we've been talking about. Maybe more tortured than the George Clooney one.
Homeboy's living his best life.
Yeah, he's got a Batman credit card and everything.
Yeah, he don't care.
Bat nipples, bad butt, living life. But I think there's a scene particularly in Batman Returns that I love. That's the people don't really talk about it. It's like it's not like a great scene or anything, but it's when Alfred comes to the Batcave and brings Bruce Wayne soup to eat, and you see this great little subtle moment of Michael Keaton, tasting the soup, and then he spits it out, and he goes, like, he switches from a grown man who's troubled to like a child that has this sort of babysitter butler, and he just goes, it's cold, and then Alfred tells him what kind of soup it is, and he goes, it's supposed to be cold, and then he just like stares at him and then comes back to his soup like a kid and then starts eating it again, right? So it's like those really, to me, those are really small, wonderful, subtle moments of their relationship, right? And you see moments like that, just like whenever he's talking to Selena Kyle and they're making out, whenever he's talking to Vicky Vale the first time that she spends the night. The difference to me between these movies and modern superhero movies is that those moments are much more subtle. Like, these people are having normal adult conversations, and you don't really see that in superhero movies anymore, right? Unless they're much more adult and dark, right? Like, you don't see just regular human conversations going on between each character. You see more of like, okay, this scene has to be specific to like whatever villain we're trying to like hunt, or like, or fucking whatever Infinity Stone. I lost track how many. You know what I mean? So like, to me, there's more character development that way because you see people just acting as human beings, and sometimes you relate to them, and sometimes you don't. And I just feel, to me personally, it feels more realistic.
Yeah, I think it definitely. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I think it improves in the second film, and that's why I like the second film a lot more. I just don't really have a relationship with him in the first one, or like a personal connection with him, just because I feel like we miss out on his connections with Alfred in that one, Commissioner Gordon, even Vicky Vale. I feel like she's just basically used as a damsel in distress, and their relationship doesn't. I don't even think it's like fully fleshed out and rich enough for us to really believe all of this that's happening, or believe that he would go to this lengths, or the things with the Joker. It's just a lot. I still really, really enjoy the movie, and I think the second one improves on all of that.
Yeah, I totally agree too. I like Batman Returns is one of my favorite movies of all time, and 89 is just something there that I watch sometimes that's fun, but Returns completely just made everything better, in my opinion. Yeah.
Well, I think what distinguishes this Batman, particularly in comparison and contrast to the later Batman movies, is that is very much a product of like his time, right? Like, back during this time, the only real superhero movies that we were getting were like the Richard Donner / Christopher Reeve Superman movies, which are all about like whimsical optimism and all that kind of stuff. This is kind of coming at a time where we didn't really see a lot of dark comic movies, period. Like, this was at the time the darkest like you're probably gonna get, and compared to things that were, unless like some R-rated properties or something kind of a little more experimental, but in terms of like mainstream popularity, this was like the edge. And then he pushed the edge even further for Batman Returns. But I think that's partially why you don't have as much of a connection to Michael Keaton's, why someone might not have as much of a connection to Michael Keaton's Batman, is because it's more like the idea behind crafting like this character who's less driven by like an origin story, or less driven by like a tragic event, and he's more just driven by like optimism and just doing the right thing and fighting for justice, compared to what we know now as like the traditional Batman story of like he's fighting for his tragedy, he's fighting for all of this stuff. It's just not as personal. It's not personal by design. And I think Tim Burton finds ways to make it personal, like Dorina said, like with moments like the soup, with moments like you want to get nuts, let's get nuts. I feel like that's a very personal Tim Burton moment. Nuts. Yeah, and I even think he has a lot of personal moments with the villains too, which we're bound to talk about right now too, I'm sure.
Yeah, before we move on to the villains, I kind of want to finish up on the characteristics of Batman himself. Obviously, like you said, RB3, there is a lot of adaptations of his character. There's a lot of different versions of his character. As someone who's read quite a few Batman comics, recently and as a kid, I feel like I have a good grasp on what the character is. But what do you think it is about this character, Dorina, that keeps coming back and that people keep adapting? Because Batman represents so much nowadays, but I feel like there's something deeper there.
Just to Batman in general, right? Not
Batman,
this particular
the character,
Batman.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I think when I was a kid, I related to him and the X-Men the most over a Superman or a Wonder Woman, because I just wasn't as cool as them. But mainly because they're humans. Well, some humans, half mutants, that have this sort of like inner turmoil of being created by the chaos that their society is bringing, similar to their villains, right? And so they're struggling with, am I going to let the world make me, angry, bad person, or am I going to use that pain and transform it to actually help that world, right? And I feel like Batman in general struggles with that all the time, right? And like that's why he struggles, is to like I think he himself like empathizes with his villains because he understands why they became that way, right? So for me personally, it's like he's just choosing not to do that, right? He's choosing to either help them or fight them, right? And so I think that's, at least for me personally, that's why I related to the character as a kid. just being like, growing up as like an angry little goth Mexican girl, being like, this is dumb. Why is there so much injustice in the world? Right. And so am I going to let that turn me bad, or am I actually going to try to help?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Sabrina.
Well, I echo everything you say there with the Batman as a character. And also, another thing to add is that he has basically everything that society deems us successful. He has money, he has power, he has all of that stuff, and he still chooses to go out of his way and help others and put himself at risk, put himself in danger for the good of his city, because he cares so much and he has so much empathy. And that's just something that I think is really special, because he doesn't have to do any of that at all, but he has the means to create everything that he has, all the technology, all of the weapons, and that's just something that I really loved.
Yeah,
agreed.
Yeah.
Unlike actual modern real billionaires. Good point, Sabrina.
Yeah, and I think it coming out during the late '80s, during that time period, it's also reflective of like the economic state, like during that time, right, and like the political state during that time, right? Like the idea of like we're in this like post-capitalist nation that's very obsessed with like making money, driven by money, like this pursuit of money. And Joker and Batman's kind of like the antithesis of it, with him being a billionaire, with him using his money to like be a parade of justice. But meanwhile, Joker is kind of going the opposite way. He's like going out of his way to exploit the class discrepancy and all that kind of stuff. And especially during the 80s, when this was like the beginning of the crack epidemic, a lot of crime was happening. The streets, and a lot of places were not looking good, probably in a lot of ways that this Gotham City was looking here. But it's kind of reflected through Joker's character, how this idea of post-capitalism, of the destruction of capitalism, the destruction of money, can eventually lead to something, more fun or more chaotic, or I guess whatever Joker wants to call it, the destruction of humanity or whatever. But I think that's why he does that whole stunt where he has the money gun flying and having money everywhere, and it's just pictures of his face on it. I think that's why that whole beauty stunt thing is like such a brilliant like metaphor for like the makeup and the facade that we put on to mask the ugliness of society. I think that's all tied into his motivation.
Yeah,
you just, because you mentioned the money flying around, I just can't stop listening to Princess Trust in my head.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
yeah, that soundtrack though.
So
yeah, well, let's do it. We have to get to the Jack Nicholson Joker. It's the one that everyone talks about. Literally after The Shining, after his success in that movie, everyone was kind of blown away by Jack Nicholson. And they were pretty keen on casting him as the Joker. What do you think about this version of the Joker, Sabrina? Because it is a very, very different version. The way he kind of descends into what he becomes eventually as the Joker.
Yeah, I liked almost every single thing about this Joker. Of course, Jack Nicholson is an absolute genius. He is an incredible actor, and he brings so much to this role. So much energy, so much like sinister charisma is the only way I could put it. I don't know how to, just so much of that. And I liked a lot of what they did with him throughout this entire film. And as I said before, I do think this ends up being like Joker's film. We see so much of what he does, and we see so much of like his backstory. And then we find out that, like, spoiler, he's the one who actually killed Batman's parents. That is one of the only things that I didn't enjoy about this film. I just think it's like a cheap way to deem him a villain when we've kind of seen him throughout the entire film be a villain. So we already dislike him. We already don't agree with him. But then there's that final straw. It's almost like in Civil War when we find out Bucky killed Tony's parents. I actually enjoy that because we see him, we kind of empathize with him up until that point where we're like, wow, that is an awful thing. But then also he is brainwashed, and that is not him making this decision. So in this one, I don't think that was really necessary, and that's just something that I didn't really enjoy within the film. But everything else, that museum scene where he's just tearing down everything, and that's what I talk about with that sinister charisma. It gives me an energy when I'm watching it that I really can't describe. I feel something like in me where I want to like sit there and do that with him, but at the same time it's absolutely awful and he's harming so much. But I think, yeah, kind of what we said before, like Joker represents something that we see a lot in Heath Ledger's Joker as well, and then also Joaquin Phoenix's Joker. Sorry to bring that up, Andres and Dorina. Sorry, don't fight. But we see it where it kind of represents people. It represents like society is kind of ignoring this one group of people, and he represents that, but it's actually the opposite when we look for it. It's actually the opposite when we look at it in that sense, because Batman is the one that society is like, yes, he has the wealth, he has the power, he has all that money, and he could just sit there and enjoy life if he wanted to. He doesn't have to do anything that he's doing. But then we have Joker, who is going around causing all this chaos and complaining and making everything a lot worse, trying to make a point, trying to make his voice heard, and it just becomes something so extra. So I love a lot of what they did with this Joker, except for that one thing that I pointed out. But yeah, Jack Nicholson is absolutely incredible. There is no denying it, and I think this is his film at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'll toss it to you, Dorina, because I'm curious about it, mainly because it is so different than what we usually get from the comics. And I get that Joker is supposed to be more up to interpretation, but I feel like making this character of Jack Napier, I think is what his name is, and almost descending into the Joker versus other versions that we've gotten before is significantly different. Yeah, what is your take on that version?
I mean, when I saw the movie as a kid, I was obsessed with Jack Nicholson's Joker. Like we didn't have my only reference for Joker before him was Cesar Romero in the comics, right? I don't know if there was other Jokers like live action, but those are the only ones I had seen. So I thought he was brilliant. I thought he did a good job of capturing the wackiness that's more like family entertainment or oriented Joker that Cesar Romero had poised, but then he was also scary, right? Like he was also like, he's definitely like, I for the time, I thought he was terrifying. Like as a kid, I was scared of him as much as I was, fascinated by him. I think he did a really good job of being the Joker that you don't know, you don't know what to expect. And because he's so chaotic, you're scared of him. I also think that later when we get Mark Hamill's Joker from the animated series, I feel like I feel like Mark is personally my favorite Joker. I think his voice is incredible, with what he does with that character. But I feel like he definitely was inspired by Jack's performance, right? Like I don't think we'd have that Joker from the animated series that Mark did so well if we didn't have a Jack Napier, right?
Absolutely.
So I feel like for the time, for like 1989 as a debut film, he was a perfect Joker. He was so fun. He was kind of like Jim Carrey's goofy Riddler in Batman Forever, where he's just really fun to watch, right? As much as he's scary, he's also really entertaining. And you could tell that Jack Nicholson was having the time of his life. Like you could tell he's just dancing. He's doing all kinds of like, what's it called? Bodily comedy, like it's just, you can tell he's having so much fun, and that's what it totally translates to the screen.
Yeah, I think Jack has a lot of fun in all his roles. Obviously, The Shining is one of my all-time favorite movies. I love that movie to the death, and I think he's having a blast in that movie. Like the whole time, he's having so much fun. But I'll toss the question, and I'll phrase it a little bit differently to you, RB3. Not necessarily Jack Nicholson's performance, because I feel like everyone can kind of concur the performance is mesmerizing. But the character of the Joker, his background, where he comes from, why he does what he does, what did you think of what Tim Burton did with that?
Well, it kind of flips the origin story myth, right? Like it takes it, it makes it more directly like kind of cinematic. I think what is what it does. Like I think when you look at a lot of what Joker is in the comic books and Batman mythology, it's usually somebody who's completely disconnected to Batman. It's just somebody who the Joker and Batman kind of resemble the cycle of crime of who created who, like the chicken and the egg kind of thing. This movie puts it directly in as the middle of the conflict for the movie, so much so that it changes it to having Jack Nicholson Joker being the actual killer of Batman's parents, right? But outside of that, what does Joker himself actually represent? I think he kind of represents, like I said before, a lot of anti-capitalism, a lot of he's very artistic. He's like an artistic expression dude who feels like suppressed, who feels like limited, who is just trying to take on this rebellion against society, which is why I think Tim Burton relates to this character so deeply. I think this is really the pivotal. I think really more so than Batman, Joker is the more pivotal character in this movie. Even so much so, when the opening credits happen, Jack Nicholson's name comes on first before Michael Keaton. I think it really shows you that Tim Burton's priority was really making Joker this artsy fartsy. Not artsy fartsy thing necessarily, but kind of like the opposite of like an anti artsy fartsy kind of dude. It was almost kind of like the first meta character in a lot of ways that kind of led to the influence of not just other Jokers, but I argue like Deadpool or like something like that, because he literally carries his own jukebox around. He carries his own soundtrack around. He defaces his literal first like act of defiance is defacing art. Like he very much is like he doesn't like speak to the camera like directly like break the fourth wall, but he has a very like kind of meta, kind of funny, kind of hilarious thing to him, with Jack Nicholson being the first Oscar winner to actually play, the first of many Oscar winners to play Joker. He took the role and took that comedic sensibility and that more heartwarming sensibility that Tim Burton added to it, and added this like serious, gritty, classic gangster, old school kind of character acting that Jack Nicholson has. So it's a combination of both.
Yeah,
Totally.
and obviously it's absolutely incredible, and it kind of paved the way for the other incredible Jokers that we've gotten. Obviously Heath Ledger, Oscar winner Joaquin Phoenix, who won an Oscar by playing the Joker, which is also mind-blowing.
Two or three actors won playing Joker.
That's
And also-
absolutely insane.
And also to add to just the comparing the actual not just the performance like you said, Andres, but to compare the character that Jack Nicholson was portraying and compare him to the actual Joker comics. Like, you have a ton of Joker interpretations, right? And like that's something that as I've gotten older, I don't care anymore if it's comics accurate. Like, as much as I'm a comic book fan, just make a good movie. Like, we have so many different adaptations of these characters that it's fine. If I want to see the really like cool, hopeful Superman, I got Christopher Reeve. If I want to see a more modern, I got Henry Cavill, right? That's how I feel about it. It doesn't have to be like super accurate. And I agree with Sabrina. Like, I don't think it was necessary to have him be like actually the murderer of Bruce Wayne's parents. But it doesn't ruin the movie for me. Similarly to like, it's kind of one of the few Batman movies that actually portrays the Joker's origin a little bit accurately, because he falls in the vat of chemicals, right? So like there's things like that you can think of, like, like that was comics accurate, but it doesn't make or break the movie for me.
Absolutely, yeah. Alrighty, guys, that was it for Batman 1989. After the break, we're gonna get into Batman Returns, so make sure you guys stick around.
Best one.
This ain't funny, so don't you dare laugh. With the 4/5 divide you in half. You getting at me equals a bloodbath. You do the math, take you out the equation. This ain't funny, so don't you dare.
Check out this week's episode of Netflix Roulette, where Cade and guest Caitlin Hardy talk about killer clowns from outer space. Enjoy!
Okay, so we just got back from watching Killer Clowns from Outer Space. And Caitlin, what are your first impressions, first thoughts?
Definitely an 80s movie, hands down. The editing is super, super like 80s. I don't even know how to explain.
Corny,
cheesy, like Spy Kids, but like 80 years ago.
Yeah, like very much like Jaws vibes, Ghostbusters vibes, like Casper the Friendly Ghost vibes.
Very much all of that.
But I thought it was terrible.
No, it was god awful.
Yeah.
I'm glad it wasn't actually scary.
Check out our new website on geeksofcolor.co/first-cut to check out our reviews, our videos, and articles that pertain to everything First Cut related. Check it out.
Come along, children. Now we're going to have a little music.
What is up, guys? We're back talking about Batman Returns now. Now, pretty much every single one of us concluded that we prefer this movie. I'm gonna go around the table. I know Dorina and Sabrina already said RB3. Do you prefer this one to the first?
I do prefer this movie. I think the first Batman is a little more influential, but I think this
Yeah.
one's definitely better.
All right, let's let the cat out of the bag, and by cat out of the bag, I mean Catwoman out of the bag. Michelle Pfeiffer, RB3. Let's go straight to you, man. What is your? A lot of people consider this to be the perfect comic book casting of all time. I've heard arguments for it. I think there was a movie fights about it. I actually was in that movie fights. Actually, shout out to Clark Wolf. She picked Michelle Pfeiffer. I picked Christopher Reeve, Superman.
No.
As the
pretty good.
perfect comic book casting. Talk to me about this one, man. Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman.
Well, Michelle Pfeiffer was seemingly like born to play this role. I think this is one of the best comic book performances we've ever seen. Frankly, I think it's impactful because we spend so much time with the character. We see her complete arc and journey all the way through, from her rise to her fall to her lowest of lows, and to the point where she reaches the transformation from Selina Kyle to Catwoman, to where you fully understand it, you fully sympathize. You're actually more sympathetic at her than you are of any other character, I think, in this entire movie, even more so than Batman. I think even in the first hour of this movie, Batman shows up, I think, literally 2 times. So, and for like 2 short scenes. This movie is far more concerned with telling her origin story, which I think is super deep, super relatable, super, it tells a lot of issues that pertain to insufficient gender equality. It speaks to a lot of issues of, mental distress, mental illness, to poverty levels, right? To how like she's kind of like just barely scraping by on the edge, but still has to live in a society that is that's so preyed upon the rich in a society and of the people like Bruce Wayne. It's just so deep. It's very layered. I think it's been unmatched by any other, to me personally, any other female or woman supervillains. Has been unmatched in that terms. I think it is one of the best superhero villain performances I think we've ever seen. So,
yeah, Sabrina, what does this character mean to you? Because earlier you said it means a lot.
Yeah, well, I just want to go off a little bit of what RB3 said, but yeah, I've said this before, when I think about a really, really great villain, I think about somebody you can 100% understand their motivations, you can empathize even if you don't understand, or even if you don't agree with what they're doing, you can understand why they're doing it. And I think this is genuinely the best example of that. And as I said before, like, in terms of this film, she's 100% the star of the show because she has that fully fleshed out, really rich arc throughout this entire film. And it's something that seeing her from the beginning and seeing the way she is shy, she's kind of soft-spoken, she's a little bit beaten down, and then that transformation she goes through after basically like the straw that broke the camel's back, the last time somebody
broke her
wrong
own back.
She broke, oh god, I did not oh god, yeah. But that example,
was a big fall.
It's a big fall. She literally dies. It's the last time somebody does her wrong, and she's able to resurrect, and she's able to become this femme fatale. She's able to stand her ground. She's able to 100% no holds barred, just like do everything that she wants to do and be the person she wanted to be, even when she's going through her wardrobe and she's going through her apartment, she's destroying everything that was there because that person died. Selina Kyle died. She's Catwoman now, and she's somebody who's able to 100% speak her mind and do everything that she wanted to accomplish. And I just love, my favorite scene is her transformation when she comes back into her apartment and she's smashing the hello there sign and it's like hell here, and she's just going through all of her clothes and tearing them up and then making the suit, the iconic suit that I just adored when I was a child. I loved seeing that strong female character on screen because, especially in like I said, in 1989's Batman, Vicky Vale is just a damsel in distress, and it does nothing for me when I see that on screen, when I just see women always being like the victim, and that's what motivates the hero to do. No, I want to see her stand for herself and not have anybody help her out in that way, and that's why I love Catwoman so much. And she's my favorite villain of all time, but I don't think she's a villain at all.
There you go. Dorina, Catwoman, talk to me about it.
I mean, this is why Sabrina and I are sisters. So here's the thing about Catwoman. I think she's the best. To me, she's equally up there with Heath Ledger's Joker. Like, I think
Yeah.
she's completely revolutionized. Like like, who would think we would get a live action Catwoman that's that complex and even better written and better characterized than a lot of the comics, I think. And it's crazy to see. It's like, completely echoing what Sabrina said. Literally, like, that transformation scene, like, as a kid for me. When did the movie come out? Like 91, 92, right? Yeah. So I was 10 years old, and it was crazy for me to, like, this 10-year-old little Mexican goth girl again, to see, right when she comes back from the dead and she's all messed up, and her voicemail comes on, and they, all of the messages are basically like, here's how you can be a better woman. Like, this is like beauty product over here, right? It's right after she's been treated like shit by all the dudes she works with, right? So there's all of this anger and rage that she finally explodes, right? And that's why she starts destroying her apartment. That's why, like, her whole apartment is pink, and she starts, like, graffitiing it with black, right? Like, for me, I was like, holy shit, this is like, she's transforming as I'm transforming as a 10-year-old. Like, she was like, she basically had enough of the society she was living in, how she was being treated, whether it's being undervalued at work, whether it was being treated badly by misogynistic men that she worked with. Just Gotham City, like, as soon as you open this scene of you first have the Pee-wee scene with the penguin, which is great, but you obviously see this, like, super messed up parents that just throw their baby in they're rich, but they throw their deformed baby in a lake, right? So right out there, you're seeing people in Gotham are crazy, and not a lot of them are good people. And then you switch to the scene where the Christmas tree opening of Gotham, where, like, you see the sexy girl, like, what is her name, like the Ice Princess or whatever that they call her, and that, spoiler, later on gets killed by the penguin, and you see all of these weird, like, rich misogynistic people that are just living in this weird society that is not a good society, which is why we have a Batman. And so you see Selena Kyle transforming from that and saying, enough is enough. I don't like this. The world is wrong. It's treated me wrong. So fuck all of you. And I feel like they did such a good job of whether it was a combination of Michelle Pfeiffer's performance or the way her character was written, to also own her own sexuality. Like, as much as, how many people have been attracted to this character because she is sexy as fuck and she's super hot, but she's not there for you, right? She's not there for the dude. She's there for herself. She's like, I'm going to be me. Fuck all you. I don't care. Like she's constantly, like, rejecting the penguin, being gross, right? Like, she always stands up for herself. And I just feel like that, to me, that's Catwoman, right? And she also, it was really nice to see. You usually get to see dudes in movies being crazy, right? You get to see, like, the Jack Nicholsons of the world, like, going insane, but you rarely get to see a woman do that, especially at the time. And so to see that performance in a movie that, kids are watching was really meaningful to me, to see that, yes, women are also complex. Women are also fucked up because the world has made us that way, right? Like, we can be as equally fucked up as dudes, right? And I feel like that was captured really great with her performance. I can keep talking about this for an hour.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with it. Yeah.
No, it's really interesting, right? Because it's very much ahead of its time, like you guys said. And it's also, it inspired a lot of femme fatales in the future. I'm even thinking about the irony between the connection between two of my favorite, two of the movies that I'm thinking of right now. I just rewatched Underworld last night, and I was thinking about the skin tight leather, and I was like, oh my god, that's literally Kate Beckinsale as Celine, and I was like, oh, Selena Kyle, Celine. There's a clear inspiration there as far as a character design, aesthetic, all that stuff. But it's also that idea of a female character being powerful and being someone that is difficult to nail down, if that makes sense. Like she's difficult to understand, but she's also difficult to defeat as a villain in quotes that I put. That's what makes her so different than anything we've seen before, and the idea that this is a Batman character amplifies that. Talk to me about what she means nowadays, Dorina, and I'll throw it back to you again, Sabrina, afterwards, and what kind of characters she can possibly inspire, and what kind of generation she can inspire.
I mean, I feel like one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when, because we didn't even get to talk yet about the chemistry between Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael Keaton, because I guess they also hooked up in real life, which I was like, that's awesome, good for them. But the way she handles her coming back to life, right? When she comes back to Max Schreck's office, the great Christopher Walken, who's also fantastically horrible in this movie. I love him in this movie. But she comes back and he's shocked, right? Because he thought he pushed her out the window and he killed her. And that's when Bruce meets her for the first time, I believe. And she, she has like a little Band-Aid on her forehead, and she's telling, she's immediately, Max Schreck's character like tells her, oh, you like fell, right? Like right away, he's like Trump. Like right away, he was like trying to like make her lie. It's like, I didn't kill you. Don't tell people that I murdered you. Like you fell, right? Like you went on a trip or whatever. And she's like, you know what? It's a blur. And she goes through like that whole little monologue that I love, where she's like, it's not complete amnesia. Like I remember Sister Mary Margaret puking in church. That whole monologue that I love, where she's like, and then what's it called? It's like I remember the time I forgot to wear my underpants to school, and the name of the boy who noticed was Ricky Friedberg. He's dead now. Like just so psychotic, but also in the same way, like scaring the men back. Right. And that's what I feel that I loved about her character, is that you see her, like Sabrina said earlier, the earlier Selena Kyle in the movie is timid and is trying to please the people that she works with, mostly dudes. Right. And then Catwoman says no to that. You don't treat me right, so I'm not going to treat you right either if you're doing that, or I'm going to stand up for myself. And I feel like that's a very like powerful thing for a little girl that's seeing this movie for the first time, to be like, that's not okay to be treated that way, and I should stand up for myself. I still think, other Catwomans we've had are obviously Julie Newmar's great. I thought Anne Hathaway did a good job. I just didn't think she was Catwoman to me, even though I thought I think she's a good actress. But I feel like this character kind of created a shift in film of people being like, women can stand up for themselves, but not in a way that's like the boring 2-dimensional strong female lead character that we hear about nowadays, because that also becomes boring. Like that's what was disappointing with like a Black Widow, right? Who I loved in Winter Soldier, but then I felt like her character was 2-dimensional in the later Avengers movies, right? Or Gamora, right? Like we have all these cool female characters in movies, but they're not as fleshed out as I feel like Michelle Pfeiffer was in this movie.
And it really is insane for you to say fully fleshed out just in this one film that she's a supporting cast member of. It's really crazy to think about how fleshed out she is just in this one, when we have characters in other comic book films who are in multiple films and their arc doesn't even feel as rich as hers. But it is really great, like going off of what you said, even seeing how she is in the beginning and how disposable she's treated, literally thrown out the window, and the way she comes back, because that's how society just sees women sometimes, and that's how kind of in a lot of art, that's how we're portrayed. It's always like so one-dimensional, so two-dimensional. Like there's not really much to women. We don't really get to see the multifacets of how we truly are in real life, the actual raw and authenticity that there is, because we're humans as well. There's a lot to us. It's something that I talk about that I love in comedies like Booksmart, where we can really see women be gross. We can see women be dirty, because that's how we are sometimes. And in this example, it shows that she can sit there and she can kick ass and just be powerful and strong and compelling, and somebody that when she's on screen, we talking about when we were young girls looking up to her. It is so important, it's so pivotal, and I think it just guides the way to create strong female characters that aren't serving somebody else. They're serving themselves. The way she takes hold of her own sexuality, and she is able to walk around and be confident within herself, and not seen as, we see her as sultry, we see her as a vixen, but we don't see her as like slutty. That's a lot of the word people like to throw around when they see women that are confident with their sexuality. We see her as strong, and we see her as confident and comfortable, and that's what I really, really enjoy.
Yeah, I'm gonna toss it to you, RB3, for the same question that I had, but almost kind of to answer my own question about what kind of character this inspired. Obviously, these last few years, people have really catered towards Harley Quinn, another DC character, and it's interesting how Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman almost paved the way for this Harley fandom mania that's kind of taken over. Mostly women who are fans of this character. Am I on the right track with that, RB3, or no?
Yeah, I think so. I think what this Catwoman laid out is more of an anti-hero perspective to women characters and supervillains in particular, or villains. Because, you know, Catwoman isn't necessarily the villain in this movie. She's not necessarily the bad guy. Who's really the bad guy is Penguin and Max Shrek. Shrek. Yeah, the great Christopher.
Christopher Walken.
Walken. I kept wanting to say Watts. I was like, Watts, it's not Watts, it's not Watts. Yeah, but they're the real bad guys of the story. She's not really the bad guy. Same way Harley Quinn's not really the bad guy in the Batman animated series. Same way I think that in the next movie, Batman Forever, Poison Ivy isn't necessarily the bad guy. Like, you know, these aren't necessarily people who are fighting. Yeah. They aren't necessarily people who are fighting for like the end of the world or this ultimate destruction, or, you know, to have a Penguin takeover of Gotham. They're just literally fighting for themselves, and they end up getting caught up in this whole supervillain thing because Batman keeps shutting them down. So it's a really interesting dichotomy, looking at the supervillains as the heroes and Batman as the villain, right? And I think that's where something like the Harley Quinn show kind of takes that perspective. The Harley Quinn show on HBO Max, you know, and a lot of shows kind of are taking that kind of revisionist look at these characters, which I think is really fascinating.
Yeah, we've talked.
I'm glad you brought. I'm Andres. I'm glad you brought up Harley Quinn because you know, you guys all saw Birds of Prey. I'm not sure how you feel about it, but I really enjoyed it. And what I enjoyed about it was the fact that, again, we saw a bunch of girls just that they were, or like in Booksmart, right? Like that they're just messed up and they're trying to survive every day. And that's much more relatable than, you know, as much as I love Kim Basinger, like Sabrina said, that, you know, a beautiful Vicky Vale that's just screaming all the time, right? Leave the screaming for like the bedroom, but you know.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I really do feel like there's a connection there. And the way that, like you said, it can inspire these kind of characters that we see nowadays. All right, let's finish up on the rest of the movie. Obviously, we have Danny DeVito as the Penguin, which is also very different from the comics. But there's a lot of themes in this movie, RB3, that I feel like the first movie kind of touched on and this one amplified on. Talk to me about the whole mayor aspect of this movie.
Well, yeah, I mean, it goes back to like the political angle of these Batman movies, right? I mean, the idea of, you know, having mayor candidate Max Shrek dude, him being this like dude who, you know, is a tyrannical guy, a really crazy dude who ultimately ends up taking. I mean, I don't know if they established Harvey Dent in this movie or in a previous movie. Yeah, with Billy D. Williams, right?
Yeah, that was 89.
Yeah, so but they don't even. So I think what is. I mean, it's just a general commentary of you know, the political backdrop for the series. On top of, and again, it plays into the whole thing with the Catwoman and the gender stereotypes and gender politics and gender mistreatment. Right, that's a big aspect of like the political angle. But it's all set to the backdrop of like Penguin's like anti-fantasy story, right? Like, you know, usually if you see fantasy stories or traditional folklore where the baby is in the cradle and is getting rocked up the river, you know, and really parallels to like, you know, religion and the Bible and the story of Moses, right? and you see the baby get picked up and get taken care of. But in this story, you see the parents literally putting the kid in the basket, like they're giving the kid away. So it's like this really tragic.
To like the river. They're not even giving it away. They're just
they're just they're just throwing it out there. Exactly. Hoping somebody else will pick it up. So it is like this really tragic anti-fantasy story kind of thing that again plays into the sensibilities of like Tim Burton and his like subversion of expectations and who he kind of personally considers his like POV characters. So you look at it from the perspective of like from both Catwoman and Penguin's perspective. It's really just like this tragic like entanglement of tragic backstories, you know?
Yeah,
Totally.
yeah, for sure. I feel like a lot of that has to be said with the tone of this movie. And I'll go back to you, Sabrina, because I feel like if there's one criticism that a lot of people have, or one thing that people love about Tim Burton's movies, is that as dark as you can go, there's always that cheesiness and that campiness that's added there. How did you feel about the tone of Batman Returns?
I actually enjoyed this one. I've already said that a lot more than the first, just in terms of the way the characters interact with each other and their cheesiness, because most of what I enjoyed in the first one in that sense was Jack Nicholson's like line delivery, like when he says like, have you ever Dance with the Devil in the Pale Moonlight, stuff like that sticks with me. So it's the same thing with this one. All of Catwoman's line deliveries, all of her iconic lines, it's just something that sticks with me, and I really feel like it sets the tone, it fits the tone because it's dark, but at the same time humorous, and it verges on cheesy. I wouldn't even say it's full cheese. I feel like there's worse out there. I still feel like it holds up, and I wouldn't call it full cheese. But I really do think that Tim Burton did a really great job kind of towing that line of having that dark and grittiness mixed in with the comic booky eccentric tone of it. I think he did a really great job of melding those two together pretty seamlessly.
Yeah, what do you think, Dorina? Would you consider it dark humor? I know a lot of people would, but how would you describe that kind of tone of adding the dark aesthetic and the dark tone with the campiness on top?
I mean, I feel like as a horror fan, I'm already like, have very messed up dark humor, but I think Tim Burton, what he tried to do, I can't speak for him, but what I thought he showed with his first Batman movie is he was trying to please the studio, right, and make a movie where he can sell to kids or sell toys.
Sell toys, yeah.
Which, let's be honest, it's an amazing Batmobile. It's my favorite Batmobile of all
they're
time.
cool toys.
But also making his version of, the character and going into the dark psyche of all of these characters, not just Batman, but his villains. And I feel like in Batman Returns, he just went full on, like the studio just was kind of like, okay, you made us a bunch of money, so go do your thing. And he was able to create a Tim Burton version of Batman finally. And I feel like with that comes the darkness, as I mentioned, of like analyzing these characters and their tragic backgrounds, like RB3 said. But at the same time, like, you have all kinds of tones in this movie. You have moments where, Catwoman shows up for the first time to save this girl from this creepy guy that's like in the alleyway. And then something I miss in superhero movies, which is blood, right? Like, you see her scratch the dude's face, like in a cross. And then the girl's all like, thank you, and she's like, don't thank me, you're an idiot, right? Like, she's very, like, you see like the minor horror aspects like that, right? You obviously, like you said, the messed up, not just the baby penguin being thrown in the lake, but like that scene where Cobblepot literally like bites off the dude's nose, right?
Yeah.
Like there's all of these like horror scenes, but then at the same time, you also see penguins wearing rockets. Right. Yeah. So, and I don't know whose idea that was, right? Because PETA would have a word now, but I think they look cute in the rockets. So you really have all different kinds of tones in this movie. But my favorite part of it is the fact that you can have a version of the Penguin, not just Catwoman, but to focus on Danny DeVito's performance. You can have a version of the Penguin that's very different from the comics, but it's a cool new version that Tim Burton came up with of showing a half monster, half animal, half sort of man, right? And then he was behaving animalistic in certain ways, but then in other ways he was behaving like a crooked politician as well, right? And I find that fascinating, and it makes for a much more complete movie because you have all these different tones, but they make sense within the movie to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, there's so much in this movie, and I think Tim Burton really nailed the aesthetic once again. Obviously, we talked about it in the '89 movie, but I'd be remiss if I didn't bring it up for this one as well. It's incredibly well shot. It's weird, quirky stuff in there as well that really adds to the Tim Burton-ness of it all. But yeah, I think we all agree that it really gave something different and paved the way. Any final thoughts, Sabrina, before we close out this conversation?
Yeah, I love doing episodes like this, and I love having amazing guests like Dorina because it gives me a chance to really revisit and appreciate all of these films that we talk about, like Blade with Ed Greer as well. And it really does bring in a new perspective. So I love being able to see these from an adult lens, because I haven't in a while. So yeah, I really enjoyed a lot of it. It's super iconic. I was Googling hello there neon signs afterwards, and it's just so crazy how that, and I really want one for my room because I have a few neon lights. And it's really just, it's a testament to great filmmaking when somebody can take something that is so beloved, like the Batman character, and really put their own stamp on it and really make it their own, especially in the second film, which we've talked about. It's something really special. So yeah, I enjoyed this a lot.
Dorina, thank you so much for coming on. We really do appreciate you. Your passion, your enthusiasm is incredible. So we really do appreciate you for coming on.
I appreciate you guys. You guys are like, honestly, like, other than I think the Wangers, like, you guys are like my favorite podcast to be on. So like, okay, you guys, just don't tell them. No, but I love all your different, the three of you have always different really cool insights into everything we talk about. Even when we disagree, I still like love that debate that Andres and I had over Joker, you know. So Sabrina, I'm totally also looking for a hell here neon sign, by the way. I've totally been looking for one, and it's really hard to find. RB3, obviously, like the best taste in movies, since he loves Blade Runner and Joker, etc. But no, I this movie, like Batman Returns, is top 10 movies for me. I know I love The Dark Knight, but I feel like this movie is like helped construct who I am, which is probably why I'm so messed up. But I just feel like there's so many things that people forget about it because they focus on the way that, oh, you know, his suit's weird looking, or like they focus on things that are dated. But if you really look at the characters and the story, it's really well done. It's really well written. Every character is so complex, and literally, like, other than the Addams family, Morticia and Gomez, Selena Kyle or Michelle Pfeiffer, Selena Kyle, and Michael Keaton's Batman or Bruce Wayne, hottest couple in a movie ever. Like, the hottest scenes, like, I mean, exactly, cigarette RB3. Like, that's what I want, like, all my relationships to be like. They're just so hot for each other, and they understand each other's darkness. I love it so much. And I love you guys.
That's what we want, right? What is that? Goals? Yeah, goals.
Goals.
Hashtag goals.
Yep.
Either way, Sabrina, where can everyone find you?
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at SabrinaXMonica, and then on Twitter at SabrinaOnFilm.
RB3.
You follow me at Director RB3 on Twitter and Instagram.
And finally, Dorina, anything you have coming up or anything you want to talk about or share?
You guys can find me. I'm usually yelling about movies or politics on Twitter and Instagram at Evil Dorina. I also have my own YouTube channel called Bad Bruja because I'm a witch who is really bad at spells. But I also am doing a few shows that are actually starting this week. Tomorrow and every Wednesday, I'm going to be world girling with my world girls, Roxy Stryer and Steph Sabra. We basically give things a whirl. Tomorrow we're giving astrology a whirl. So who knows what could happen, but it's mostly to entertain people in these dark times. And then Thursday, I'm starting also a new show with John Roca. It's called Impolite Truths, as an ode to George Carlin and the crazy things that are happening in the world. We're both, as you guys too, are very passionate about just being kind humans and making sure that those in power don't continue don't continue to be greedy assholes. And we are, it'll be an interesting new show where we're talking about politics from a humanistic point of view and criticizing all sides, and just trying to be actually honest, which is not what mainstream media does. So check that out tomorrow on Roxy Strier's channel, and then Thursday on Don Roca's channel, and hopefully you guys can come on at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. We would love that. Dorina, again, thank you so much. We really do appreciate it. This was amazing. So thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Alrighty, guys, for the Meaning of Podcast, I'm Andres.
There's RB3.
I'm Sabrina.
That's
Meow.
Dorina. We're peacing out. Peace out, guys.